Bom dia. I so wish we could all do this in person in beautiful Lisboa, Lisbon. And here's to hoping that we can all do it in person next year instead. My name is Melker. I am Group Vice President, GM for IDC's IT Executive Programs and for the CIO Executive Council. And I look forward to spending a few minutes with you here today to talk about our thoughts on the future of security and really as it relates to future of trust and risk. The agenda for my presentation here today, if we move forward with the agenda slide, 3 bullets here: the future of trust. What is it? What is it not? How do we define it? Key elements, what's the hierarchy? And then I will end with a few recommendations. But let's start with the future of trust here. So I am actually going to show you the results of a study we did earlier this year. And this survey we did was a global CEO study. And we asked CEOs what and how would you rank the following 9 priorities? And if we move to the next slide here, you will see that digital trust programs ranked very near to the top, if not as being a top priority. And this is a CIO agenda survey that looks at what are the key priorities between the next 3 to 5 years. So how did we get here? How did we see this evolution of trust becoming a significant priority for CEOs? And on the next slide, if you have followed IDC over the last couple of years here, you have heard us talk about this rapidly advancing to the third platform that it's taking place right now. The second platform that we came from, this was your client server model, local area networks, PC model. It was pretty straightforward. It was easier to manage. However, now when we are advancing to the third platform, all of this has changed. And it's particularly one thing that has really changed, and that is this massive influx of connected devices. And from that, all the data that we have and all the data that needs to be protected. Now, in fact, at the end of this year, we are seeing there's going to be about 39,000 global data centers that is going to collect and manage all of this data. And we're going to get this data from over 31 billion different things that are connected. And if we click forward a couple of times, we're going to collect these from over 7 million different edge locations. So if we move forward a little bit here, this increasingly complex ecosystem of core edge endpoints is really made up of 3 big elements. It's the data itself that we have and that we need to manage. It's the network where the data will traverse on. And then, of course, the applications that will deliver for us AI. They will deliver real-time information. They are the ones that's going to enable autonomous vehicles. They are the ones that's going to manage devices that are implanted into our systems in our bodies, for example. So as you already know, data is going to be absolutely critical for us. And this data needs to be protected. And that's where we have a challenge today. So if we click to the next build here, this year alone, we are forecasting that we're going to create 59 zettabytes of data, a massive amount of data. And 54% of this data is going to need some level of protection. And this is the challenge we have. In the next build here, you will see that unfortunately, only 45% of the data is today receiving the the protection that it needs, right? And this protection we need to deliver trust across the ecosystem that we operate in. So with this notion of trust, how do we define trust? On the next slide here, I will share with you when we talk to our clients, how do we define the condition around trust? And we talk about that trust is the condition that enables decisions to be made, next build, between two or more entities, the next one, that reflects the level of confidence between two parties, right? So the more trust we have, the more confidence I have in our ability to do business together. The more confidence I have that the data you're providing and sharing with me is trusted, that I can actually lean on this to be accurate, etc., etc., and of course, protected as well. So this is one definition. Another quote tied to this that I really like is on the next slide here. It's Greg Metcalf. He is the director of OECD, and he states, if you want to build trust, then really today, it's not about your social license. It's about your social license and making sure your business is not too far away from what society expects. Otherwise, you won't have a business because you won't have customers. So he talks about this social license. Now, Greg added another quote that I also really like after the pandemic hit, and that's the next build here. The pandemic has underlined how quickly the social license can evolve. The only way companies can meet such shifting expectation is by pursuing a culture of trust right through their business, a culture of trust, right? So I really like that definition here as well, or when he defines the importance of trust going forward. So we can all think of a number of different situations where trust goes away, where it erodes. It is, for example, if an organization's got a data breach, if they leak information, how an organization reacts if they find themselves in an ethical or an unethical situation. But what would be an example of a situation that it helps an organization build trust? Nestle is one of the organizations that have embedded in their business something we call radical transparency. So among other things, they produce quality coffee for their coffee lovers. And I'll raise my hand and say I'm a big one, big coffee drinker and lover. And they wanted to share the view behind the curtains for their clients. They wanted to see the inner workings of the company related to coffee. So they used and leveraged blockchain to really give their coffee connoisseurs an opportunity to see, if we build this out, how the whole supply chain evolved from the point of sale. So that's the first build here, and you can build out the whole chain of it, all the way from the point of sales all the way back to where this was roasted, where it was planted, and how it was harvested. So if you build out all the slides here. So here we see that online, a customer can see all the way back to where the coffee was planted, harvested, and how it then went through the supply chain. All right, so then on the next slide here, one more here. Let's now talk about what are the key elements of trust. What does the hierarchy of trust, what do I need to be aware of to build the trust framework? So in the next slide, you can build this out. Trust is really made up of 5 different pillars. It's security, it's risk, it is compliance, it is privacy, and it's also social responsibility and ethics. Now, what's important to understand of these 5 big pillars is that they are they're really independent, right? They aren't created equal. It is important to understand, how do these 5 pillars relate to each other, and how do they drive and deliver trust in my organization as a part of a bigger ecosystem, right? So understanding the connection with these 5 pillars is really, really important. On the next slide here, let's look at how are these 5 related to each other. And in the first, the foundation, you have risk. Risk is really the fundamental building block for the hierarchy of trust. Risk is all about you as an organization. How much risk are you willing to take on for your business? Above risk, we have compliance and security. Now, these aren't optional. You have to do these things, right? These are dictated. They are compulsory for you as an organization. You as an organization, you have to achieve a certain level of compliance and security standards. Frankly, if you don't have that certain high level of compliance and security, trust is really not your biggest issue. Compliance and security is. Right? Now, on top of compliance and security, we have privacy, we have ethics, social responsibility. And this is different. This is different for every single organization out there. This is really your personality as an enterprise, your personality as an organization. This is your culture. This is about that social license that Greg was talking about, right? This is how you want to be viewed as an organization in the markets where you operate. Now, it's really important to also note here that throughout time, now more than ever, enterprises are being watched, how they behave, how they use that social license, and how they deliver on certain trust vectors inside the ecosystem where they operate, right? So privacy, ethics, and social responsibility is here to drive trust. And that's where we end up. On top of this, you have trust. Trust is at the top. And if you do one more build out, so you have elements of trust here: risk, security, compliance, ethics and social responsibility, and privacy, and trust sits at the top. Now, the interesting part with trust, though, is that trust in of itself is really not a thing. It's not really something you can buy. You can't really sell it. Trust is all about, what do you do with trust once you have earned it? What are some of the targeted outcomes that you're looking to gain from the trust that you have earned? Now, we call these trust outcomes, and you can divide this into really 3 different categories. So in the first build out here, you're going to see, so if you click on the next slide here, trust governance. Trust governance is all about, how do you use and leverage the trust that you have inside the 4 walls of your company? How do you establish best practices around this? And how can you evolve as a business inside the 4 walls of the organization? The next step is about trusted ecosystem. This is about, you have now established a trust framework, and you have communicated out this to your partners, to your suppliers, to your distributors. But how do you ensure that they are also adhering to the trust outcomes or the trust framework that you have had? How do you evolve the business together? Now, likewise, if you don't have complete compliance with this, and you find yourself working with a business that can adhere to the trust framework that you have established, it could be that they have then become your weakest link in your trust framework, and you have to make a decision. Is this a company that you want to continue doing business with? And then the last element of this, it's about trust-enabled commerce. This is all about, so now you have earned trust, you have trust inside the ecosystem where you do business. How do you use this trust to develop new products, new services? How do you leverage trust to deliver a customer experience that's bigger, better, and beyond anything else out there in the marketplace? So this is the hierarchy of trust. This is how you can also look at evolving your trust framework and manage trust programs inside your organization based on these 5 core pillars, and then also the trust outcomes you're looking to achieve. So in the next slide, in a separate study, we looked at what are the top trust challenges for the organization. And when we display the results here, it's probably no surprise to you if you click forward once. And if you one more, you will see that the number one problem is, how do I ensure and qualify and measure the benefits that I'm going to get from investing in trust programs, right? I think we can all think about what will happen if I don't have this and something happens, but how do I proactively manage trust programs and drive targeted outcomes that you're looking for? So on the next slide, in the same survey, we also asked, what are some of the technologies that you will invest in to engender or build trust across your ecosystem, as well as internally here? And if you click forward here, probably also no surprise that you see cloud-based infrastructure and applications as to be in number one here. This is about the third platform. This is about that ability to manage this complex ecosystem and collect the data and being nimble about doing and building up these top trust programs. Another thing that I wanted to highlight in the next build here is one thing that I think is going to continue to be very important, even though it's not highest ranked on this study here, but that is the use of encryption. Encryption, different types of encryption technologies. How do we leverage and use encryption both for data in transit and also for data at rest? And frankly, how do we communicate value of encryption out to our ecosystem? I think that's going to continue to be a big area of focus and investment going forward. And then on the last build here, I wanted to highlight this as well. This is tied to public relations services, right? So you really think about this as a more traditional line of business investment, right? This is marketing, this is PR, but I really wonder, will we see a big investment, or at least a significant investment, coming from the IT organizations themselves, where they invest in telling the story, telling the narrative, communicating how they are building and generating trust in their programs. Nestle is being that one example, right? Could we see similar technologies using blockchain where they then want to take also the ownership of communicating the value of this transparency in their organization? So, all right. So our last slide here, let's talk about a few of the recommendations that we really encourage you to look at. already now. And if we go to the next slide. So the first one here is it's about your risk profile, right? It is about understanding that this risk profile that you have can quickly evolve, right? You need to monitor this on an ongoing basis, and you really need a process to ensure that you are accounting for changes in your risk profile. And again, going back to what Craig said, COVID, the COVID-19 pandemic has really changed the risk profile for many organizations, and has done it really, really quickly. And then the next recommendation, trusted roadmap. This is really about having a vision. Understand what are you looking to accomplish in the end, and more importantly, maybe really understanding where are you today, right? So you have point A, you have point B. So where are you heading? Where are you today? And from that, you can establish that trust roadmap that you need to have. And then the next recommendation, establish a point person. Establish a chief trust officer inside your organization. And this really goes both for mid-market to very large enterprises. Establish someone who's ultimately responsible for your trust programs. Often we hear, or when we start working with organization, they declare that, well, all of us are responsible for our trust program. And that works for some, but also so often we see that when it's declared that it's all of us responsibility to manage something, in the end, no one really is. So again, it's important that you have a point person for this. And then the next recommendation, define your trust framework. Leverage the 5 pillars, understand the framework and where you're operating and how you are going to be judged by the community and again, the ecosystem where you operate, and allow to measure the success and know what you're measuring as a part of your trust framework. And the next one, once you have established this trust framework, if you go to the next one, thank you, really be specific with communicating what this framework is to your broader ecosystem. Talk to your partners, talk to your suppliers, talk to your distributors, and make them aware and make them understand that this is this trust framework that you operate within, and you want them to adhere to something similar. So there's a common understanding of how you want to build trust across your broader ecosystem. And then the last one here, don't wait. This is already something that today is bubbling up as a big priority, as you saw from the first slide, on the CEO agenda. Don't wait. Don't allow that maybe the board in the end are the ones that's going to dictate what your trust program is going to look like. Or maybe even worse, that your customers are going to dictate what your trust program or that social license you have is going to look like, right? So these are 6 recommendations that I'm going to end with today. And I also really encourage you to reach out to us. If you have questions around, regardless where you are in the process here, and you have an interest in getting a lot more information behind the slides that I have shared with you today, just talk to us. Or frankly, if you want to work with us to establish that trust framework, or if you want us to validate what you have done so far, we'd be happy to do that. Here's my contact information, or I also really encourage you to reach out to any of our colleagues in or at IDC Portugal and ask them questions about this as well. So with this, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of the conference here. And again,